Hey there! Today I'm going to go visit with Lilly Emendy, who's running the urban teaching farm in an area of Greensboro, North Carolina called Warnersville. And Warnersville is a heritage community, and there's some really interesting history there. They're currently farming some land around a church, so there's a relationship they have with the church there, and they also have a lot of volunteer labor. And this is also part of a bigger project called the Out of the Garden Project. So much cool stuff in here, just great people that have come together to do a lot of good in the Greensboro community. So hope you enjoy.
So my name is Lilly Emendy. I am the farm manager for the Urban Teaching Farm, which is where we are now. We are a just under 1 acre production farm just south of downtown Greensboro, part of the larger nonprofit Out of the Garden Project, which has been around for 11 years and is the largest fresh foods provider in Guilford County. Our goal is to reclaim food that would be going into the waste system and give it to people who are hungry, especially kids and their families.
All right, so where we're located, I know we're really close to downtown Greensboro as we can hear, right?
Yeah, as we're hearing the sirens and the school bus just pulled in, and yeah, we're very close to downtown setting. It is literally less than a mile to the city center of Greensboro. One of the most interesting and I think important parts of this project is our location. So we're located in the neighborhood of Warnersville, which was founded in 1867. Yardley Warner, a Quaker from Philadelphia Freedmen's Association, took money from there, met up with this guy named Harmon Unthank here in Greensboro, and Civil War ended. Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and enacted, but couldn't really be put into play because the war was still going on down here. And what Harmon Unthank and Yardley Warner did was they purchased 30 acres of land, which technically was outside of Greensboro city limits at the time. It is now 1 mile from downtown, so times have changed a bit. But they took that land, they parceled it off into 1 acre lots, and intentionally sold it to the recently freed enslaved people of this area. So it was the first community of its kind anywhere around here in North Carolina. It had this profound, beautiful growth for the next 100 years. It was an extremely self-sufficient neighborhood, had its own churches and community centers and schools, and there were people of color whose family had a direct link to enslavement, owning land they themselves just recently considered property. Until 1960s came through and the beginning of urban renewal, and this entire neighborhood was razed to the ground, which is why all the buildings look like they're built brick ranches in the 60s, because they were rebuilt at that time. Big roads were cut through the neighborhood. Its main street that went right into downtown was hewed off on itself. It was before this Supreme Court case that required people to be compensated fully, or at least ensure that there was similar housing nearby, but they were generations and families forcibly removed from the area. Some of them came back, some of those families came back and have rebuilt in this area and in this neighborhood. Some haven't and were never able to. And in a few years ago, I think it was 2015, they got certified as a heritage neighborhood, which was a really big deal. They were going to be a historical neighborhood, but they didn't have enough original buildings left because of that urban renewal decimation that happened.
So what's the term heritage neighborhood? I've never heard that before.
It's a way to designate that there is a tremendously important history in this space, but it doesn't qualify for historical signage because there are no original buildings left. I'm not sure if there's an original tree left in the neighborhood. It was totally leveled.
Was that part of the decision-making process when you guys were like, hey, where should we put the farm? Like that was something that you felt strongly about, was putting it in this neighborhood?
For different reasons. Yeah. we decided to put the farm here because this is a food desert community. There are many food deserts in the Greensboro High Point area. So places where people lack financial resources, lack access to vehicles or predictable transportation, and then lack access to fresh, nutritious foods. Or what they can get to is like a Dollar General that's 3/4 of a mile walk away, which doesn't lead to a life where you can get the healthy food that you need to grow, or your kids need to grow. So we wanted to grow food in a community that had that food hardship. That felt like a really important starting point. And then after we found the relationship with Prince of Peace Lutheran Church and this land lease, we have a 5-year land lease here, what we also learned was that this neighborhood had this really beautiful, profound history. As a farmer, you want to honor the land and know the soil, and a huge part of that is who's come before you and who's been on that land before you. And for us, it is this site that we're on is a 3-acre site that was originally 3 1-acre residential plots that were originally sold to recently freed enslaved people in 1860s and 70s. I mean, just understanding that history and honoring that history by telling the story and by making sure we're growing like relevant foods, historical foods, heirloom varieties that have a connection to that North Carolina history is a vital part to doing this project responsibly.
Seems a really special situation.
Yeah, it is. And we are trying to honor that with this farm. And one of the ways we want to honor it is by sticking around. So a big part of what we do here is to sell the food that we grow as well as teach about it so that we can be a project that is around longer than the 2-year grant funding that got us started.
Okay, so this farm here is part of a larger project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Out of the Garden Project is a nonprofit that predominantly focuses on feeding kids and their families. We do that through our food reclamation program, which we collect food, thousands and thousands of pounds of produce and canned goods and shelf-stable items and frozen meat and all this stuff that would be going in the trash that couldn't be sold for one reason or the other. We have food distributors, grocery stores, personal donations. I mean, I'm talking, there's a warehouse like 20 minutes from here that has like 30 pallets of fresh food each week that comes in and out of our cooler and then gets directly delivered to communities, food deserts in Greensboro.
Well, where's most of that stuff coming from that's going into that warehouse?
I mean, it's so many different places. And I think that's a key part to our success is that we're not just relying on like one grocery store brand to donate their stuff, but we're relying on like 20 different vendors who have extra. Grocery stores, people who drive giant trucks full of California produce across country, and then it gets 2 degrees too hot for 2 minutes and they can't sell it legally. They donate it to us. We get it out to people.
Okay, so the farm here, where does this produce go? Is that going into that? So
that doesn't go into that stream. The way that we connect this farm to our larger mission is I'll back up and say addressing food security is not as simple as handing someone food. It is a more complex issue that has to do with access and resources. One of the things you need to have access to is knowledge about food, whether it's where to get it, how to grow it yourself, what good food is, what healthy food is. The connection between what we do in the farm and what we do with our warehouse and distribution is that, it's not just about giving someone food, it's also about teaching them about their food. That's a huge, huge part in like finding food sovereignty for yourself, for your family. So all of the food that we grow here goes to our customers. We have this next year in 2020, we're gonna have a 50-member CSA. It'll be a 24-week-long program. Like while we're growing that food, selling that food, so this can be a financially sustainable project, we are inviting anyone and everyone to come out to this space, to work this space as volunteers, to have classes come visit, to have apprentices and interns, and really learn farming while we're doing real production work.
So a lot of the labor here is going to be volunteer work?
So I would say as part of our kind of ethical framework for this project, the essential functions are covered by paid staff. And then we create time to teach through having volunteers, if that makes sense for that model. So we do have a lot of volunteers who come out, and the work they do is beautiful and invaluable, and the community we build through having like 20 people out on a Tuesday morning as the sun's rising is really, really valuable. Not just what we're learning, but the connections that are made through that. But would the work still get done if no volunteers came? Yes. We just wouldn't be able to tell anybody about it.
Okay, and where are the CSA members, and how does that work? Are they picking up here? Are you guys delivering places?
So this past year was our first year we did it. We broke ground November 2018, and we started our CSA mid-April 2019. So we created all these beds. This was all lawn space. We created an acre of beds, grew a bunch of stuff to sell, and people came to the farm to pick up. There was just one pickup location every Wednesday afternoon. This next year, based on feedback we got midway through the season and at the end of the season, we're going to expand pickup locations, because for us it's a cool opportunity for people to actually come pick up on the farm. We are in downtown Greensboro. It's this unique time where you get to actually conveniently go to the farm that you buy your produce from.
So you have a pretty unique relationship here with the church and also the Out of the Garden Project.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, now that you've mentioned that, you know, the food here is not going into that food stream. So can you talk a little bit more about the relationship between the three organizations, really?
Yeah, so it's a partnership. Out of the Garden Project, as a nonprofit, has really thrived on quality partnerships over the years. And this latest one, so it's a grant-funded project with the Rotary International grant that got us money to get all the infrastructure it would take to start farming. As this audience knows, it takes a lot of money to buy that initial equipment. And the farming itself is mostly labor and your operational budget. Like, seeds are not the most expensive thing, but everyone thinks it is. So we got that money to get going, and what we found was this really cool partnership with the church land that we're on. It's Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in the Warnersville neighborhood in Greensboro, and they gave us access to their 3 acres, some of which they had we worked together to design the space so that it would meet both of our needs, but they're a small congregation. They've always been focused on health and wholeness. It's been one of their key components to their mission. And so they were looking for a way to take this unused lawn that they were paying someone to mow every week and do good with it. And that was the extent of their interest. I mean, our missions don't overlap beyond that, in that we are not a religious organization. Obviously, they are, but I think there's great potential in agriculture and overlapping with churches because of that land access. And as long as we have a contract, that works really well.
So what about the relationship with the larger project here? Is it just a funding thing? Are they helping getting the project funded?
Yeah, so we are absolutely 100% a part of Out of the Garden Project. My check comes from Out of the Garden Project. They pay for all of this. What the Urban Teaching Farm is, and the reason it's branded separately, is that it has nothing. It's like very different from our truck that drives around to neighborhoods and gives produce to people who are hungry. That experience, it looks very different than growing plants in the ground. We're not in the food production business as a whole nonprofit, just kind of here in this space.
Lilly, why do you think that it's important that the Out of the Garden Project has a farm? Is there like other reasons other than just like, hey, we have a farm? I mean, some like waste streams and stuff like that can be shared?
Yeah, so we are getting thousands of pounds of produce donated each week that often is already on its last leg. And so that grocery store had 2 weeks to get it out on the shelf. They couldn't do it. They've got a few days left and they want to give it like a second chance, and so it goes to us. We have a 3-day window to get it out, and sometimes stuff has already gone bad. Like, it might be a pallet of cartons of strawberries, and they just ordered too many that week, and some have started to go, but most of the berries are fine. We'll get it out to folks. When that can't happen in a good timeline, we have a huge compost here. So we have this like built-in system where all of this food waste comes to our little farm and creates a really large compost pile that we're working on turning into soil for our space here. We want the Urban Teaching Farm to be replicable. We want other neighborhoods and communities to pop up real production farms in food deserts, in areas that are afflicted by hunger and a lack of access to resources, but it needs to be specific to that area, and this is a part of it here.
My question here is, your CSA members that were the produce from this farm, are they in Warnersville, or is this just a reason to try to promote agriculture and show like fresh food and stuff like that?
Yeah, so Some are. We had a pay what you can program this year, so folks could identify how much they could afford to pay, because our CSA share was $500 this year for 24 weeks, and we it seems pretty disrespectful for us to pop in and say, hey, we're growing a farm in your community because you don't have access to fresh, nutritious foods, but there's a $500 paywall.
Well, that's what I was asking, because I know CSAs aren't cheap.
Yeah, they're not cheap, because we small farmers know it costs a lot of money to grow this food, and the labor to hire people appropriately. We have paid internships for local college students. So we both want to make our margins so we can stick around and give access to our neighbors. And so we did that this year through a pay what you can program. So people named their price. We would fundraise to fill the gap to that $500. We had someone pay $140 this year for the entire year. She came every single week. She's a neighbor. And then we also have other people in the neighborhood contributing in different ways.
So this is a part-time gig for you? You have some other stuff going on?
Yeah, so this is a 25-hour-a-week part-time gig for me. This is my off-farm income. My on-farm income is a farm my wife and I are just about to start called Fielder and Physic in Stoneville, North Carolina. We'll do rotationally grazed meats and medicinals, and then invite the public out to the space. Coming 2020. We just got the land, so we're just getting started on it.
Okay, so your off-farm job is a farm job.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's pretty unique.
Yeah. I come from a background of environmental education and trail building, and working with the next generation of conservation leaders, and I found farming through a job where I was tending a garden and teaching kids about food. It was a very education-focused position, but I realized I had this love for growing a high-quality, nutrient-dense product and prioritizing what I was growing as opposed to managing the space or doing the teaching aspect, which is valuable, but I wanted to shift focus, and so farming became a thing.
So much cool stuff going on here. Can you tell the audience here, ways that people can follow along with the farm here and also your personal projects?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram, Out of the Garden Project. On Facebook, we are Urban Teaching Farm and Out of the Garden Project, both separately. And then check out our website, outofthegardenproject.org. And we're listed under one of the projects under the program sites, the Urban Teaching Farm. I think I've got a picture up on there, so you'll see me.
Can we follow your future farm yet, or is that not?
Not yet. Coming out soon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
well, I'll put a link down below for all those things.
Great.
And we'll probably do a separate video with a tour of the farm. So
perfect.
Thanks so much, Lilly.
Yeah, thank you.